Oh, here we go. I know there's only a few of us here, but let's get going. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the January 8th, 2020 Citizens Advisory Committee for the Costa Mesa Sanitary District. Let's begin with roll call.
Chair Mike Carey,
Present.
Vice Chair Albert Graham Jr., Andrew Nielsen, Elodie Katz, Judith Elo,
Present.
Judy Takaya,
Here.
Mike McElroy,
Here.
Monty Fields,
Present.
Bill Marsh,
Here.
Stephen Takahashi, and Sue Lester. Here. Thank you.
Okay, next we'll move to public comments. Seeing how there's nobody from the public, there's no written comments.
No, Mr. Chairman, it's done.
Okay. Moving on, we'll move to agenda item number 1, the approval of the Citizens Advisory Committee meeting minutes of November 13th, 2019. Did everybody have a chance to review those? It's a pretty busy meeting.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second
Second, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Carries? Okay. Receive and file the Board of Directors regular meeting minutes of November 21st.
Yes, there was nothing to note on this agenda. All the items on the board agenda was actually discussed at the committee.
Okay, great.
I have a question
Yes.
about that. I read through the agenda and the minutes from the directors meeting, and I noticed that under consent calendar item 10, it's to just receive and file the overview of the CAC meeting from November. Does that mean like nobody's reading it? There's no discussion, it just gets received and filed?
No, they're reading it. It just means as part of all the other items, they can approve it as one motion with all the other items on consent. Now, if they want to talk about it publicly, they can pull the item from the consent and talk about it publicly. If there's something on there they want to discuss, they can do that. But the board reads they're supposed to read all their agenda items and then approve those items.
Okay. That's it. No more questions.
Okay, then,
Actually, I have one more question.
All right.
about that. I'm sorry. Under jam reports, when you guys, the board discussed the hiring of the PR firm, and it got assigned to a study session, was that the one that just happened, or has it been assigned to a specific study session?
It was discussed at the last study session, and the board directed us to proceed with the RFP process, and then have the solid waste ad hoc committee, which community member Monty Fields and Elodie
Katz.
is on. They will help us review the proposal. They'll actually receive presentations of the top 2 RFPs proposals, and I'll make recommendations to the board. Or actually, we'll start with how make recommendations to CEC, then follow to the board.
Okay, thank you.
Next was the draft Board of Directors regular meeting minutes of December 19th.
Just a couple 2 items on there worth noting, Mr. Chairman and committee members, is staff gave the board an overview, or actually gave them CNR's annual performance audit that we do every year on their performance. And there was a lot of items that we had some discussions on and discussed with CNR. We shared those discussions with the solid waste ad hoc committee this morning, with community member Fields attending that meeting this morning, and we're planning on presenting that to the CEC at your next meeting as well, about our discussion with CNR.
Good, I read over the minutes of that evaluation. It was very interesting.
Yes, yeah. So there's definitely some. We'll share that with you at the next meeting. I think 2020 is going to be an interesting year. Also, I want to bring to your attention on we discussed the tabletop, the emergency preparedness tabletop exercise we conducted back in October, and we do this every so often to make sure we're prepared in an event of emergency, like the cities do. So we conducted what's called a tabletop exercise in our emergency operations center, and we simulated a a big storm, a rainstorm, or severe flooding in the community. And so we threw out scenarios to staff on how to respond to certain situations, like when multiple pump stations went down, or we had an SSO occurring, what do you do? And so we kind of work through those projects. We did have some lessons learned, and there's quite a few and those lessons were shared with the board. Some of those lessons was, one is to reach out to the cities of Newport Beach and Costa Mesa and get some training in their Emergency Operations Center. Especially Newport Beach's EOC, it's quite extensive and technical. It's actually quite fun to see how they work. So we're going to reach out to them to maybe just sit in one of the next exercises and see how they operate their EOC. Next one is that we need to reach out to the county and do repair works on our radios in the trucks, especially now that we now have what's called the 800 megahertz system. And before, the 800 megahertz system allows jurisdictions to talk to one another during emergencies, and it was usually just available only to police and fire and public works. Now it's available to all special districts, so we can talk to all the cities can talk to us on this radio. Prior to that, we had to go to REWOC, the Water Emergencies Response Organization in Orange County, which is all this wastewater in special districts, but it was one radio that fell under one radio. We all have radios that with one radio at REWOC's headquarters. So this 800 megahertz system is going to greatly improve our communication with other agencies, especially when we need mutual aid. Let's see, we also want to look and have our own radio frequency as well. So if there is a catastrophic disaster, chances are our cell phones are going to be down, and therefore we can't talk to each other. So we want to make sure we have our own frequency in the radios so we can talk to each other. So we're going to work on that. We're also going to review a list of contractors in our emergency operations plan and maintain that current list so that if we need a major repair, we can have that list and contact them immediately. We're going to purchase about $1,000 worth of meals ready to eat and have those here at HQ and at the yard, because if there's a long extended period of an emergency and we have to be here for longer than 24 hours, well, we got to feed our staff, and that's one way we can feed them. Also, we're looking at putting in more locking composite manholes in the streets that can lock, so it prevents people from opening the manholes, and we don't want the water going in because that can cause a sewer backup. And then we also want to schedule some more training with the county's web EOC. It's a software that they have, we have in our laptops, and we can communicate with other jurisdictions, school districts, cities, and the county, and we can see what issues they're dealing with, like if they have a fallen tree or they have flooding going on. They'll report on the web EOC, and we can see what they're doing, and if they need mutual aid, it's a good way to communicate that way as well. And the last thing we want to do is we found we need to replace some sandbags in our yard. We have some sandbags that have just been worn out because of the weather conditions, so we got to get those out and place some new sandbags. So those are the lessons learned, and that's why it's really good to have these exercises. We always learn something new when we do them, so we try to do them annually, if not at least biannually. So that's my update on that, and that's the report.
Fantastic.
I have a
And once
question.
again, I'd like to, oh, sorry.
I just have a question, and Arlene and
Art?
Art, I'm sorry, could probably answer this better. There's a couple of streets in Costa Mesa on like 18th and Anaheim, and there's an area of 19th Street that when there's a hellacious downpour, those streets flood terribly. And I know it's done that for, what,
Forever.
30, 40 years or something like that.
There's more than just those two.
It's, right, but is that a city of Costa Mesa infrastructure problem, like
Yes.
they need to
That's
fix the
city.
streets?
That's-
Okay, and then my question was, do they try to throw that back on the sanitary district in any way, shape, or form, the city?
I don't
Not
believe
really.
No,
Okay.
that's,
'Cause I know
That's
it's-
floodwater. That's
Okay, cause I know it's just, is
Yeah,
always been that way, and I was
yeah,
curious.
I know it
it's a
is.
city issue.
Okay,
I think they're taking steps to improve that. though,
Yeah, they are.
You know, so I think in the near future, they'll be fixed.
so how does that
Yeah,
affect,
we're about Trader Joe's right down in there.
yeah, how does that affect the district in terms of?
Well, actually, it kind of ties into our next item on item 4, if you want to do it, I can say
Okay,
how that addresses.
perfect.
Yeah, definitely.
Once again, before we move on to that, I once again would like to encourage members of the CAC to attend the Sand District Board meetings, just so that we can have a presence there and see what's up with these guys.
Yeah, we've gotten them at our meetings, we should be at. their
Right,
meetings.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, where am I here? Okay, item number 4, the inflow and infiltration, Mendoza Pump Station smoke test findings. This was an item that was carried over from last month's meeting?
Yes,
Anxious to
yes.
hear-
Dish engineer Rob Hemers can't be here today. He's been on the weather, so I'm gonna take the lead on this item. So smoke testing is an effective method to identify defects that allow rainwater to enter the sewer system. We don't want rainwater into the sewer system because the more rainwater gets to the system, it could back up at the treatment plants, which eventually can back up here. So we want to prevent inflow from going into the systems. So the smoke testing, how it works is that a smoke machine and a blower drives smoke into the main line. The smoke travels up the main and up to the sewer laterals, all the way into each residence connected to the main. So when smoke will then exit through openings leading to the sewer lateral. So for instance, if smoke exiting from a plumbing roof vent indicates the house is connected to the system. But if the smoke coming from a backyard storm drain grate indicates the homeowner is solving his or her draining problem by illegally connecting to our sewer system. So we hired ADS Environmental Services to perform the smoke testing. We did this in October 14th through the 22nd. And we smoke test half of the Mendoza tributary area, which is about 24,500 linear feet. Before the smoke test was done, we did contact city officials. I contacted the police and fire chief, the city manager's office, to make sure that, let them know that if they get any calls about smoke coming out, this is what it's about. I mean, we did notify the residents, post notices, and say, hey, don't be alarmed. If you smoke coming out on the ground or from your home, it's just harmless smoke. We're doing a test. Don't be alarmed. We didn't get any calls, so the outreach worked. Attached in your staff report is the results from ADS. They did find 6 defects on private sewer systems, and that needs to be repaired, but not real major defects, but they brought their attention. Also, they found 12 cleanouts that had cracked or missing cap. There were 3 recommendations. One recommendation, the first one was to notify the property owners of the defects found and recommend they perform those repairs, and I don't believe we sent a letter out to them yet. The second one kind of addresses to community member Lester about flooded streets. They said evaluate street flooding records to determine potential manholes that could be inundated during inclement weather conditions and consider sealing the manholes. And we know where those streets are. We do have a map of a GIS map of all the streets in the city that are prone to flooding. And so what we do is we go to those manhole covers, we make sure they're plugged and sealed so no water can go inside of it. So that's what we do with those flooding streets. We make sure those manholes are plugged and sealed. So recommend number 2, we are doing that right now. Number 3 is to install a flow monitor device. And this is a strategic use of flow. A strategic use of flow monitors can help locate the areas in a system that have the highest concentration of inflow, which will then help us pinpoint and fix the problems. So on December 10th, we entered an amendment agreement with ADS for about $13,000 to monitor the flow in the tributary area for 90 days. And it was good timing. We got it right in time for the December 23rd and the Christmas Day rainstorms. So we were able to collect data from the storms, and we were able to determine that yes, inflow is coming into the system. We believe that inflow is coming from the fairgrounds. And so our next step is to enter the fairground property and to try to identify offending manholes and document with pictures to see if the current inflow sources are the same as we stated in previous correspondence with the Fair Board. Because we've already been in contact many times that we think the inflow is coming from them. We made recommendations on what they need to do. We think now we need to kind of make a surprise visit and see if we see any open manholes, any openings that goes in their sewer system, and make sure that they take proactive action. So the board received this report. They did direct us to smoke test the other half of the tributary area, which we will do as soon as we have funding for that. So we have to get funding for that. But that's our next step. But this first smoke testing was to prove successful. Happy to answer any questions you have.
Where are you attempting to find the funding? Is it part of your new budget or?
Yeah, I think I want to wait till the end of the year, see if we have any money left over in terms of finance. If not, then I may go back to the board and ask for some additional appropriation.
How do you get the fairgrounds to comply if they're not considering their state agency? Like, how do you guys do that?
We would contact the Water Resource Quality Control Board, which even though they are a state agency like the Fair Board, they still have to follow the same regulations, same rules. So we will contact regulators, and they will pay a visit.
And then they would fight it
Yes.
for you if
Yes.
you don't. Okay,
Yes.
that's good to know.
I see the three suggestions, but the pros and cons for each suggestion, I would want to know that before. Is there any?
Sure, well, the pros, okay, the pros, number one, notify the property owner review. Obviously, there's still inflow coming in from the defects. Is it significant? Probably not compared to the fairgrounds, but still, it's probably good practice to recommend that they make those repairs. Now, if they don't, no harm foul. I mean, there's not inundating our system, so I don't think we need to, really use a strong arm tactic against them personally. So, but we'll at least notify them as it's recommended. Evaluating the street flooding, like I said, again, that we do that already. If we don't, we know the streets are flooding. If the manhole covers are not plugged, the holes, if we don't plug them, we don't seal around them, then water's going to get in them. And we know there's a considerable amount of streets in the city that flood. So we do believe that plugging and sealing the manholes do have an impact, can improve that. So by not doing it, then yes, I think we're going to see an increase in inflow. The flow monitor device, I think we've never done this before, and so I think this was a good, also good practice test just to see how well it works. And it did what it said it's supposed to do. It's supposed to you're trying to pinpoint where this inflow is coming from. So now we believe it's coming from the fairgrounds. So we can take this data and show the fairgrounds, say, look, we have hard data to prove it's coming from you. So you need to help us correct it, or we're going to report you to the regulatory agencies.
And the way these sound, it's like we should implement all three of these. It's not one of the others.
Yes, and that's what we're doing. We're going
Okay.
to.
How many
In fact,
manhole-
2 out of 3 were already implemented. We just got to now notify the property owners.
How many manhole covers do you think are on the fairgrounds?
I don't know. Rob would know that. I don't know.
And we're not allowed to go in and deal with them? Just,
We try to be, we have a professional courtesy and ask, hey, can we come on property? And typically they're going to say no.
yeah.
We can't.
Can't we just seal them up ourselves, or?
No, it's not. They don't belong to us.
The state is owned by the fairgrounds,
Yeah.
so,
Or the
it's,
fairgrounds.
there's a little legality there.
Okay.
Does that conclude that?
Yeah, thank you.
No other questions? Next up on the agenda is agenda item number 5, the number 318, President Pump Station reconstruction recommendation for alternative 2 update.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So on March 13th of last year, the Citizen Advisory Committee reviewed and discussed 4 alternatives to designing the reconstruction of the President Pump Station. As you might recall, the committee recommended alternative number 2 because it was the least expensive of the 4 options. The project could have cost, if the board approved option or alternative number 1, nearly $2.7 million. The CAC recommended alternative number 2, which would save nearly $1 million from option 1. However, a structural engineering study needed to be performed on the existing concrete pump station structure to ensure it could be reused as an emergency storage vault. The results of the analysis indicate that because building codes have become stricter over the years, the existing concrete vault requires moderate structural enhancements to meet these codes. The approximate cost of the enhancement is $60,000, which is significantly less than the $275,000 cost for a new vault. Therefore, it is feasible to proceed with alternative 2 to reconstruct the entire pump station for less than $2 million. On October 29th of last year, the Board of Directors received the structural engineering findings and approved the committee's recommendation to design and construct the pump station with alternative number 2. And designs have begun, and we anticipate construction to begin in the fall of this year, and it'll probably maybe last to the beginning of 2021. This is a long project. So on behalf of staff, I want to thank the committee for your recommendations. Your recommendations was very helpful to staff and to the board, and it helped save the organization of nearly $1 million. So thank you for that, and we really look forward for your input on future items like this, so thank you.
Great, thank you for the update. Any questions or comments regarding? All right, moving on. Agenda item number 6, consideration of new appointee to Policy Review Ad Hoc Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an action item. We will need some action from the committee on this one. On May 23rd of last year, the board of directors established a policy review ad hoc committee to review district policies and ordinances. Directors Schaefer and Perry were appointed to this committee. And on May 16th, the Citizens Advisory Committee appointed committee members Fields and Takahashi to the policy review ad hoc committee. So far, the committee has held 2 meetings, one on October 10th and December 4th. Committee member Takahashi has not attended either meeting, despite several attempts by district staff to contact Mr. Takahashi by mail, email, and phone, and there has been no response. And you see, he's not here today as well. Therefore, the district staff is recommending that the Citizens Advisory Committee consider appointing another member to the Policy Review Ad Hoc Committee. They just finished reviewing the administrative regulations. They're currently reviewing the operations code, and that'll probably take a few more meetings, and then they'll review the employee handbook. Their next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, January 30th at 8 a.m. So we need direction who would want to serve on this committee.
She does.
Oh, I just wanna see what
You got nothing going.
is in my calendar from hell here.
So nobody's,
It's just Andy, yes.
Well, I make a motion that we replace him and
And who would like
appoint
that?
someone else.
Yes.
you just appointed you.
Yeah.
I need a motion.
Yeah, you look at your calendar, you said that first.
Well, the reason I did is because employee handbooks, I used to write those, so I could probably be helpful.
Awesome.
Are
With
you
that.
available?
So,
Are you available?
on January 30th, I am.
Okay.
So, okay, so I make a motion that you guys appoint me to
Yes.
take member Takahashi's place on this committee.
Second, okay.
You got it.
Okay, all those in favor of member
I'm
Lester?
in favor.
Aye, opposed? Okay. Motion carries. Welcome aboard, Sue.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
Thank you. Thank you,
Um,
Sharon.
Wow, we are flying right through this.
Yeah.
Okay, then that brings us to the closing items, committee member and staff comments. I'll go first really quick. I'd like to thank the board and staff, and especially Scott and the CAC members for attending the zero waste presentation that we had at Orange Coast College on, whenever that was.
December 17th, something?
Yeah,
18th?
December
Yeah.
17th.
Yeah, it was great.
Turnout was fantastic. Really appreciate the participation from the Sand District and Scott giving up his Saturday to come and do that. The feedback was fantastic, actually. It was really good. Particularly your guys' involvement.
Oh, thank
We
you.
had a lot of really good feedback from that. That's it. Nick, any other CAC comments? Sue?
I actually wanted to comment, I thought that zero waste thing was phenomenal. And if all of us just found one thing that we could incorporate, like what a difference it would make. So I really appreciate being told about that and having the opportunity to go. I also wanted to thank Scott and the board for the holiday dinner that you did for us. That was super cool. It was a shame that not everybody could attend, but it was always nice and very generous, and I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, it was a good dinner.
Yes, thank you.
Third, I wanted to congratulate Nabila on being Employee of the Year. That's awesome. She works so hard, and all of your staff does, but we don't always get to, I guess, we're so busy looking at what we need to look at that we don't really look at everything that person does. And so to be able to kind of see on paper the Cliff Notes version of what the employees do, it's pretty overwhelming and amazing that with the size staff you have, you get so much done, so.
Very fortunate.
I wanted to acknowledge that. And then the other thing I wanted to toss out there is, what do we do about, we have a couple members of the CAC that just don't come anymore.
I'm gonna be bringing a staff report here to the board, the next board meeting, actually this board meeting, recommending those 2 members be removed,
Okay,
and then go solicit new members.
okay.
On that note, I was asked by Andrew Nielsen to express his regret for not being able to attend this meeting and to express his gratitude for the wonderful dinner that you guys provided. Any other comments from CAC, staff, board?
Just if you ever get a chance to see Mike's picture with President Obama, get a chance. It's pretty cool.
It really happened.
Pretty cool.
Check the
President
photo out.
Obama.
It's-
That's
Yeah,
pretty cool.
very cool.
Good also. Thank you.
When was it?
It was just before Thanksgiving, the Thursday before Thanksgiving.
This Thanksgiving?
Yeah, just a few weeks ago.
Well, where were you and where was you? Where were you both?
It was in Atlanta, Georgia for the U.S. Green Building Council's
Okay.
conference. It's called Green Build. It's a massive conference. President Obama was the keynote speaker, and the Orange Coast College Recycling Program was honored with a leadership award from the USGBC alongside Microsoft, the city of Hoboken, New Jersey, and the Minnesota Twins baseball team, and Orange Coast College Recycling.
What did the
We have an
twins- What were
opportunity.
the twins? do?
Yeah.
What did they do?
It was quite the honor.
And what did the twins do?
They built their new stadium, completely zero waste and LEED,
Oh.
LEED certified.
Oh, okay.
It's a nice stadium. Yeah, I've been there. It's just nice.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
All right.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
With that being said, we will adjourn this meeting at 6:28.
In record
PM.
time,
Wow.
I want to add.
Nice. Very
It's
good.
unreal.
Sorry, Rob, you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
It's so special.
Is there stuff I can review ahead of time, or do we go line by line?